Hello and welcome to Saints Live. I'm Steve Forbes.
And I'm Kenzie Benali.
And we're back for the final time before the World Cup break. And today Southampton are at Anfield to take on Liverpool in the Premier League. Now we're joined again by former Southampton captain Dean Hammond. And finally, as ex-Saint midfielder with some goal-scoring prowess, Andrew Surman. Drew, your first time on Saints Live. You looking forward to it?
Yeah, really looking forward to it. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Problem at all. And Dean, I'm only joking. All 10 of your Saints goals hold a special place in our hearts.
Big place in my heart as well, Steve, because there's not many of them, so there's a lot of room, to be honest. I'm all well. Looking forward to the game
Good
today.
Stuff.
Oh, it's a real pleasure to have you both with us on the show. Looking forward to this one, actually, because we have got a lot to talk about, don't we? It's certainly been a busy week at St Mary's with the arrival of Nathan Jones as the new men's first team manager following Ralph Hasenhüttl's departure on Monday. And Dean, I want to come to you first on this because he's someone you know relatively well from your time at Brighton together. Is that right?
Yeah, Nathan was, or should I call him Gaffer? Nathan was at Brighton when I was there as a youngster, coming through the youth team. He was a senior pro then, so I know him reasonably well. Played with him a few times. Passionate character, quite an emotional guy, but loves his football, knows his football. Really, really dedicated to the game when he was a player, and I'm sure he's taken that into his coaching and his management. And just as a player, if he does, he used to prepare really, really well. He was a really fit professional, and he was very professional. I'll use that word again, and I'm sure, like I say, if he's taken that into his coach and his management, you can see why he's done very, very well. But the experiences he's had, I think he started at Charlton, he went to Brighton as assistant manager, had a little spell as caretaker manager. Then got his chance at Luton. He's had a few promotions. Tried it at Stoke, didn't quite work out. But then, showed his mentality. Went back to Luton and got another promotion. So he's a good guy. And I hope he does really, really well. But one thing he will do is he'll work incredibly hard, and he'll care for the players as well. So I'm sure they're in good hands. And it's brilliant to see a young manager from the lower leagues get an opportunity at such a big club like Southampton.
Yeah, indeed. And Drew, looking from afar, what have you made of Nathan Jones' success at Luton, and what do you think he'll bring to Southampton?
I think he'll bring a real strong culture, hard-working culture. I trained with Luton. I probably don't know him as well as Dean, but for a few weeks just before I retired, actually. And he's very intense, very hard-working, very fair. You know exactly what to expect from him. He's very honest with his players. And I think I've read as well since he's joined is he wants to bring a real identity to the club, a real focus on when people turn up, they know exactly what they're watching. They know exactly what they're going to get from his team. And I think that's probably what Saints have been lacking maybe recently. Recently the results haven't been great, but having spoken to a few Saints fans are sort of looking at it saying, well, I don't really know what we're trying to do. What's our game plan? What's our identity? And I think that's what he's going to bring in. So he did that at Luton. He had some great success. Obviously, it didn't work out at Stoke, but at the end of the day, he was still learning his trade. So I'm really excited about the appointment, and I think he'll bring, like I say, identity, passion, and a real intensity to the team.
Yeah, we're really excited about it as well. And interesting that you've both come across him at various points in your careers as well. But let's hear from him now, shall we? This is what the new manager had to say in his first press conference.
What's your assessment been of Southampton's season so far? What are the things you're going to focus on first to improve this team?
Look, first of all, we have to have a foundation to play from. Yeah, with the greatest respect, and I don't speak badly of him, we haven't kept many clean sheets yet. So if you keep clean sheets, then you've got an opportunity of winning games or getting points. Then I want us to be front-footed, I want us to play, but they've been used to be doing that here. The previous manager was a very front-footed manager, and for that I'm very grateful because it means that I haven't really got to try and implement that. I can just tweak and enhance that. So look, it's about being, one, difficult to beat, two, be important in attack, and combining both of those, which means then you have a better chance of winning games. Look, I won't be a manager that just sits in and is negative. I'm a positive person. I'm a positive manager in how I want my teams to play. But we have to build generally, and at a pace that's right for us.
Now, Nathan Jones talking there about how Southampton need to be more strong defensively and more potent in attack. And Dean, there was no clearer example than that of the 4-1 loss against Newcastle. Southampton had 16 shots to Newcastle's 7, but Newcastle scored with every shot they had on target. So clearly that's something that does need addressing.
Yeah, I think it's pretty evident that that's the case, Steve, that probably in both boxes this season, but in particular against Newcastle, we're just not quite clinical enough, haven't been quite strong enough. If you look at the chances we created, that chance for Elanusi at 1-0 just before half-time changes the game, changes the spirit, changes the mentality in the dressing room. The opportunity for Shea as well. And we know Shea has the quality to convert that. He's technically very, very good. And their opportunities at Southampton just didn't quite take on the day, and Newcastle did. When Newcastle got their opportunities, they were ruthless. They took them. They didn't really completely dominate the game. They didn't really outclass Southampton. But when they got in those areas, when they had those moments, they were clinical and took them really. And that was the difference between the two teams. But when Southampton did get in with Perraud, it's a brilliant finish. It's a fantastic pass from Salisu. And the frustration, I think, Steve, is that we know the team and the players are very capable and they can be ruthless in those moments and they can compete against any team in this division. There just hasn't been that consistency so far this season. There's been some wonderful performances. You go back to the Chelsea game, they were absolutely brilliant. And then just that lack of consistency to potentially back it up. So Nathan will be looking at that. And if you look at his teams previously, he likes to have a defensive base. He likes to have that structure and build from there. Maybe play a little bit on the counter-attack. Drew's mentioned it there, that he'll bring an intensity, and I think that's needed. And Southampton are the best when they play like that with the pressing. I think Nathan's teams like to press as well. And hopefully from that foundation, they will be able to create chances and they will be able to be a little bit more ruthless to pick some more points up this season.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, we'll talk about Roman Perraud's goal in just a moment. But before we do, let's hear from the fans. Lots of you sending us in comments from all across the globe, which is always great to hear from you all. We'll start with this one from Alicia. Hello to you. She says, safe travels, all those heading to Anfield. Do us proud. Nick Webb also getting in touch on Facebook. He says, time for us to shine. We've got another comment here from Carmo Ferreira, who says, good luck, Saints' as new manager, new hope and new success. And a final one for now from Stephen Townsend on YouTube. He says, a young team with a young manager, this can only be good for the club.
Yeah, certainly. Now, we did see a goal last weekend against Newcastle from Roman Perraud, Drew. That's his second of the season, and he showed pretty good composure there, especially on his right foot.
Yeah, he's been a real bright spark, actually. I've been impressed when I'm seeing him play. He scored a couple of really good goals. Obviously, it was a little bit of a consolation at that point. But I think like Dean said, we're just struggling with that clinical side of the game. And when it's taking almost just sort of your left back or defensive players having to score goals, that's a little bit worrying for me. And that's the only concern I'd have for Southampton going forward is that going to change with a new manager? You've still got the same players. You've still got players that potentially aren't taking enough chances. I'm really hoping that clinical side does come and starts to shine. But like you say, you've got players like Perraud popping up with goals. Obviously, Ward-Prowse is always going to be dangerous from set pieces. So if they might have to step up a little bit because, like I say, we're not really scoring too many goals going forward. So yeah, that was a great finish from him. And like you say, it was just a shame that it was a consolation in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. But as ever, we do march on. Liverpool, the opponents today, Dean, and it's pretty routine that on the show we ask you to predict a starting 11 before the team news is announced. Of course, it's a bit more tricky with a new manager. That said, though, what changes, if any, are you expecting to see in the team today?
Yeah, difficult to say, Kenzie, to be honest. Probably can only go on the fact of how Nathan's managed and coached before and maybe set up his teams previously. I don't think with the amount of time he's had to work with the players in the squad, there'd be too many drastic changes. I think he has of late at Luton set up with a three at the back. I think he may stick with that, and Southampton have adopted that on occasions this year as well. And they have had some success. His teams are a little bit more direct and like to play into a front man. So I think Shay Adams will continue to play. I think Shay's been, on the whole, putting some really, really good performances this year. I think Lavia will come back in. He got an hour last week, and he's a really important player for Southampton in terms of in possession of the ball. He makes the team tick. And without the ball, he reads the game very, very well and protects that back three, that back four. So I could see him come back into the team. But it's tough because you're playing Liverpool away, who are still one of the best teams in Europe. I know they're having an indifferent season, but they have some world-class players. So I'm sure there will be a thought process in that maybe we won't play as Nathan wants to play, as in he wants to build. There'll be some consideration of who they're playing against in the opposition. And I think Nathan probably does manage like that. I think there's some flexibility in his approach. So I can't see too many changes, but I think there'll be a few, and we'll see a little bit of the identity that Nathan wants to play with. I'm sure there'll be that energy, that enthusiasm, a bit more intensity, and trying to press Liverpool, but with a little bit more of a sensible approach. So difficult to actually pick the team, but I'm sure there'll be one or two changes, and I'm sure, like every manager, Nathan's looked at probably 400 or 500 videos of different games and different clips, and have his own idea on the players. So really looking forward to see what team he picks.
Yeah, definitely. Now, this week we got the announcement of England's team who are going to the World Cup, and unfortunately James Ward-Prowse, our captain, hasn't been selected in Gareth Southgate's 26-man squad for Qatar. Drew, just how disappointing will that be for him?
Yeah, he'll be gutted, obviously. The problem is there's so many talented midfielders in that group, and trying to break in, especially when a lot of those players are playing for sort of top six clubs. It's always been the same with international football. As much as Gareth Southgate has changed the outlook of international football and team selection, it's got to be said that most of the players in there usually are from the top six clubs. So James Ward-Prowse getting into the England squad was a huge achievement in the first place. He'll be obviously really disappointed he's not got in. I think he's probably been a little bit of a victim of Southampton's recent form. I think he's really, really missed Romeo in midfield. I think they had such a good partnership. I think James Ward-Prowse really, really shone in that partnership. And, he caught the eye with some unbelievable free kicks last season. So, yeah, he will be really disappointed. But like I say, I think he's probably been slightly a victim of, one, that he's not playing a top six club, and two, that Southampton have just not showed the form that they did last season when he was called up. So I'm absolutely gutted for him, because I think he's an honest player, he's a top player, and he can win a game. I personally, I don't know who you'd have replaced, but I would have taken him maybe because he can win a game with a set piece, whether it be a free kick or a corner. But, you look at the squad that they've assembled, it's very difficult to break your way in.
Yeah, well, sadly, James Ward-Prowse not on the plane, but somebody that will be heading out to Qatar with the German side is Armel Bella-Kotchap, Dean. I mean, that's testament to a great season for him, isn't it?
It is, Kenzie. He's been exceptional. He really has since he's come into the football club. He's everything you want in a defender. And for a player at such a young age, I think he's 20 years old, he's had that first taste of international football. He's made an impression, I'm sure, when he played, and the training camp that he's been on to get into a World Cup squad is brilliant. And that's testament to the performances and the form that he's been in. But brilliant defender. He's strong, he's quick, he reads the game very, very well. He shows a maturity for a player at such a young age. I think he's infectious in terms of his communication with the other players, and that rubs off on the other players when he's playing. So he's been brilliant, and he's recovered from his injury really, really quickly, which is almost a bit of a surprise. But there's lots of room for improvement, but a great player, and I'm sure he'll get better and better, and this will be a brilliant experience for him going to the World Cup for his country.
Yeah, absolutely. We're delighted for him, aren't we? It's fantastic news.
Yeah, we are indeed. Now, we will have that team news coming up in probably a few seconds' time. Who will start in Nathan Jones's first selection for Southampton? Well, we're about to find that out in a matter of moments, and I can bring that to you now. Here is the Southampton team news. Now, there are 3 changes that are made from the match against Newcastle. Shaletta Sarr, Romeo Lavia and Adam Armstrong replace Juan Larios, Ainsley Maitland-Niles and Theo Walcott. So here's the Southampton starting 11 in full. In goal, Gavin Bazunu. It then looks like it could be a back three with Armel Bella-Kotchap, Salisu and Roman Perro. Romeo Lavia, as I said, is now in the squad this week. Also our captain James Ward-Prowse, Stuart Armstrong, Moy Elianusi, Shay Adams and Adam Armstrong complete the 11. And then on the substitutes bench, we have Alex McCarthy, Lianco, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, Ibrahima Diallo, Musa Gineppo, Joe Aribo, Sam Adozi, Theo Walcott and Sekou Mara. So there we go. That is the first selection that Nathan Jones has made in his Southampton tenure. Drew, what have you made of that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. There's been changes, but I think I'm really excited to see Lavia back. You know, I've been really impressed with him. I know Dean talked about the Chelsea game. I was at that game as well, and he was fantastic. And obviously, we won that game 2-1. So it's great to see him back in. I think again, as as Dean said, I think maybe playing a back three. I'd probably say it's more like a back five. I'd probably say that when I've been to places like Anfield, or if we've played against the top teams, when they've got three strikers and they're very direct, you have to sometimes just add the extra man into the defensive line. So, there's obviously five at the back. I think that's what it'll probably be, 5-3-2 or maybe a 5-4-1 type formation. But yeah, no, I think it looks exciting. I think we do need to be careful. It's Liverpool way. He won't want to go there and be open and almost get picked apart. So I'd probably say he's probably going to go quite defensive and see if we can nick something. I think first and foremost, when you go to these grounds, you have to be solid. And I think that's probably going to almost be like a back five, try and stop their front three getting in behind, doubling up on players like Salah, and then see if we can nick a goal. Someone like I mentioned earlier, someone like James Ward-Prowse could win them a game with one free kick, one corner, and one set piece. So we definitely take that.
And Dean, as mentioned, three centre-backs starting. Are you expecting a change in formation? And also Romeo Lavia back in the starting lineup, so a bit of solidity to that midfield.
Yeah, I agree with everything Drew's just said there. I think there will be a defensive structure and a defensive patience there. I think that's only right when you go to Anfield and when you're playing against Liverpool. But I think it will be a 3 or a 5, like Drew said. I think Elianusi will play on that right wing back, that right hand side. He did that against Arsenal in the second half and performed very, very well there. We know he has the engine to do that. He has the fitness to be able to do that as well. And it'd just be interesting to see how they approach the midfield. I think James Ward-Prowse and Lavia will sit and protect the back four and try and keep possession when they can. But it'd be interesting to see whether we go with Shay Adams up front on his own, with Stuart Armstrong and Adam Armstrong playing wider, or will Adam Armstrong join Shay Adams up front and Stuart Armstrong playing a little bit more central in that central area, almost like a number 10, which I know Nathan's Luton's teams have played previously. So it will be interesting to see, but it's a brave team selection. It's a good team selection, physical as well. It's a big team as well, which I think, like Drew's mentioned there, with James Ward-Prowse's delivery, there could be opportunities for set pieces to try and nick something. So yeah, looking forward to see how this team performs and what approach they set on the game.
Well, let's get a flavour now, shall we, of how the fans are feeling ahead of kick-off. And we'll start with this comment here from Josh. He says, up the Saints, he thinks it's going to be a tough 1-1 result this afternoon. Ryan Ackland also getting in touch via YouTube. He says Nathan Jones will bring back the good times to St Mary's. Andrew Pepia also getting in touch. He says, despite my reservations, seems like a decent bloke. Best of luck today. Football is a funny old game. Anything is possible. Yeah, that's for sure. And Tim Greenman, thanks for your comment. He's getting in touch on Facebook. He says, wishing the team a great game. Come on, you Saints. Drew, before we look any more ahead, though, to this match this afternoon against Liverpool, I just want to cast our minds back to Wednesday's Carabao Cup game against Sheffield Wednesday. Saints obviously eventually won via a penalty shootout. It was a bit of a slog, but is the most important thing in those kind of instances just getting through to the next round?
Well, I think you said it really. It is just about winning those games. I played plenty of those games. You're playing against lower league opposition and they're never easy. People turn up and expect you to win, expect you to pass them off the park. And, Sheffield Wednesday came, they're a decent team. They're on a good run as well. and they play with a lot of confidence and they had nothing to lose. And that's the danger with the cup, because you're playing against players, they've got nothing to lose. If they get beat, everyone expected it anyway. So I've got to say, I think the character and the spirit from Southampton in the second half, especially, pulled them through. And I think that's a massive positive. We're in the next round of the cup. That win will breed confidence for sure, even though it's, again, it's against lower league opposition. But you need to get some momentum going. And I think, especially going to Anfield this afternoon, we needed to come away with a win in that game. So I think if we'd have lost that, it could have been a long afternoon, because there is always a hangover from those sort of games.
Now, a lot of big teams went out in that round, Dean, the likes of Arsenal, Chelsea, West Ham, Spurs, Villa and Everton, while Southampton have drawn Lincoln City in the fourth round. They're 14th in League One, so I take it that's going to be a really good opportunity to progress further in the competition.
It's a favourable opportunity, Steve. But like Drew's just mentioned there, lower league teams, low league opposition is not always easy because they have nothing to lose and they do raise their games. And in one-off games, it's very, very difficult. But if you looked at the draw, Lincoln would probably be the team that you'd want to pick. They're having an okay season, like I say, mid-table, really. It's a home draw, so you would favour Southampton. I also think it's Nathan Jones's first game in charge when we return from the World Cup on the 20th of December, before the Premier League starts again on the 26th. So I'm sure he'll want to put a good performance in, and he'll want to put a strong team out and show the fans what they've been working on during that period when he's had the chance to have the players on the training ground. And also looking at the draw, I think there's Man United left in. Man City are playing Liverpool, is that right? So one of those has got to go. So there's not many of the biggest, so-called bigger teams left in. So this could be an opportunity for Southampton. As Southampton fans, we all enjoy a cup run. And if you win against Lincoln, I think then you're into the last 8, which is the quarterfinals, one step away from the semi-finals. And who knows from that moment. But good opportunity, good draw. And if you can get through that against Lincoln, you're just hoping that you get another favourable draw and maybe another home draw. And then you can really build some momentum and start thinking, could this be our year?
True. One of the players that we'd love to highlight that featured in that game was Sam Edozie. He looked really bright, didn't he, against Sheffield Wednesday? What have you made with his time in a Saints shirt so far?
Yeah, he's been another bright spark. He looked like he was just playing without fear on Wednesday night. Everything good that Southampton were doing was coming down the left. And he just looks a real talent. He was actually ashamed to see him come off. I don't know if he was injured or it was a sort of tactical change, but yeah, he looked very bright. He got the crowd going because it was very flat first half. It was quite a flat first half, and obviously no one was that happy with the performance. But he was the one that got the crowd going, and he's a fantastic talent. So if we can get the best out of him, especially with Nathan Jones coming in, I think Nathan Jones as well will be very good for the young players. He's young himself. He's energetic. He wants to develop players. He said that. And he gets the best out of individuals. And I think that's going to be a massive thing for Edozie as well this season.
Now back to the matter at hand. A Premier League game against Liverpool today. Dean, what have you made of the Reds this season? Because, well, they've maybe not been as consistent as they have been by their own high standards in the past.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Steve, because they've still put some brilliant performance in. When they beat Man City 1-0 Anfield, they were back to what you'd expect of them, with that high intensity, that energy, that passion, which we all love from Liverpool and watching Jurgen Klopp's teams. But 13 games in, they've already lost 4 games, which is not like them. And games that you would expect them probably not to lose, against Leeds and Nottingham Forest. The others came against Arsenal and Man United, I believe. So those games can always go either way. But defensively, they look like they've got a few issues. They're conceding more goals than you would expect, and not scoring as many as Liverpool have previously. And I think they've missed Mane. I think Mane was such a big player for them, not only what he brought in terms of goals, his relationship with Salah. I think Salah's a better player when he plays with Mane and they're in the same team. But his off-the-ball work, he used to press so well for Liverpool, and he'd set that tone for them, and I think they've missed that. So they're in a little bit of transition, but they're still a top team. They really, really are, and they have some world-class players, and they just look a little bit mentally and physically drained. I think maybe that's from the last 4 or 5 years that they've had competing for all these trophies. They've still got quite a small squad compared to Man City. But I think Jurgen Klopp, he's a brilliant manager, and he made a good comment. He said, just judge us at the end of the season. Don't judge us now, which is right. But we all judge teams and players on the present. But I think they'll still be there or thereabouts. They'll still be competing. But they haven't been at their best. So there could be an opportunity for Southampton today.
Yeah, I mean, Drew, Anfield is never an easy place to visit, is it? But it does feel like it could be a good time to be playing Liverpool. Obviously, several players heading off to the World Cup. So do you think that will mean we'll see them play with a bit more caution today?
Yeah, I'd like to think that maybe a few of their players are distracted with the World Cup around the corner. You know, that intensity might drop by 5% because they don't want to get injured, they don't want to get any knocks. They'll want to turn up and think, right, let's get a couple of goals and have an easy afternoon. But you know, that's dangerous playing against Southampton, who've got a new manager and they're going to be well up for it. So, yeah, it will be interesting. Like Dean said, you know, Liverpool got a lot of quality. They are in a transition period, I think, at the moment. I think if you compare their squad with Man City, who obviously they've been competing with the last few seasons, they've just got nowhere near City's squad, you know. And when they've missed a couple of players, like Diaz coming in on the left, he's been missing. And they really, you can tell that it really affects them. You know, they're obviously trying to bring in players like Harvey Elliott. They're trying to bring them through at the same time. So, yeah, I think Southampton have got a really good chance. They just need to keep it tight. You can't go to a place like Anfield, the Etihad, and concede early goals, because then it is a long afternoon. The longer they can stay in the game, which I think it looks like we're setting up to do, then I think we've got a real chance.
Well, talking of goals, it's time to get your final thoughts and score predictions. Dean, we'll come to you first. What are you expecting from this afternoon?
A tough game, Steve. A really tough game against a top team. But I remember we go back a few weeks and when Brighton had appointed a new manager, and his first game in charge was away at Liverpool, and they drew 3-3. I think Brighton were 2-0 up at the start of the game. So that new manager can have an impact. It can bring that intensity. It can bring that additional passion from the players. But it's a tough test because Liverpool want to sign off with a victory before they go to the World Cup. And I'm sure they've got a number of players that are going to the World Cup. So you made a good point. Will there be a distraction? Possibly. Will there be players thinking, I don't want to get injured? Maybe. I don't think so. I don't think players actually think like that, but that could be a possibility. And the Southampton players will be really keen to impress their new manager. And when a new manager comes in, there is a slight effect. You do run a little bit harder. You do kind of brings a little bit more to your game. I don't know why that happens, but I think that's just human nature. So I'm going to go for a good defensive display from Southampton, a good solid approach, and we're going to get a 1-1 draw at Anfield today.
Okay, 1-1. And Drew, I know you've said that you expect Southampton to be more defensively minded, but are you also maybe hoping for a new manager bounce up at Anfield?
Yeah, I think there'll definitely be a reaction, whatever it is, you know, whether it's defensively minded, you know, a real determination not to concede, or whether it's, you know, I don't expect this, but whether they all come out the blocks and press really hard at the pitch and have a real go. But either way, I'll definitely get a reaction. I think score-wise, I'm going to go with Dean. I think 1-1. I think it's going to be. I don't think we'll score more than a goal, if anything. But I think it will be a draw, and I can see us maybe 1-1.
Oh, we'd take that, wouldn't we?
Yeah, we would. And it's funny, actually, because a lot of the comments coming through seems to be going for 1-1 draws as well. Ken Childs has said the same thing on YouTube. Well, Drew, Dean, a pleasure to have your company. Thanks ever so much for your insight and analysis. We look forward to you rejoining us after the match. Thanks as well to all of the fans. It's been great hearing from you. And for now, I'll read out a few more comments before we say farewell. Carly getting in touch on Facebook. Thanks for this. She says, come on, Nathan Jones's Red and White Army. Jarko on YouTube. Hello, good afternoon. They've said, let the new era begin. Full support for Nathan Jones. Come on, you Saints, all the way from Finland. And Cameron also getting in touch. He says, Luton fan here. Let's go, Saints. You have a great manager. And finally, we'll hear from Vishnal, a regular viewer of Saints Live. Hello. He says he's going for a 2-1 Saints win today. That would be lovely, wouldn't it? Well, kickoff is fast approaching at Anfield. That is, of course, just around the corner at 3 o'clock. Whatever happens in this one, the four of us will be back with you after the game to talk about all of the matches made a talking point. Don't miss it. Bye for now.
See you soon.